It has been a while and there is a lot to catch up on. Today, I'm sharing a full update on my own gut healing journey, including my oat retest results after treating mold and candida, what my thyroid labs and HTMA revealed that completely changed my ability to heal, and the gallbladder drama that sent me straight to the doctor's office. This episode is part personal update and part functional lab deep dive. So let's get into it. Welcome to the Stomach Solution, the podcast for all you high achievers out there who are tired of managing your reflux, heartburn, and stomach pain and are ready for a solution that lasts. I'm Jessica Washington, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and former reflux sufferer myself, so I know firsthand what it feels like to do everything right and still feel like your stomach is working against you. So, if you're ready to dig into your symptoms, hidden root causes, the ones that diet changes and supplements just won't touch, get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's uncover the solution to your stomach issues together. And as a reminder, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a replacement for medical advice or treatment. Well, hello. I am so glad to be back on the podcast. It has been such a long time since I have actually sat down and recorded a podcast episode. I know you guys were listening to the summer podcast series for a few months, and I hope you got a lot out of that. I recorded that months back and then just dripped it out over the summer so that I could have a little bit of a break from creating podcast episodes while my kids were home from school. But I'm super pumped to be back and excited to get back into our regular programming over here. Just lots of in-depth, nerdy gut health conversations for you. So today I have much to update you on. We are going to talk about my gut healing journey. I think this is episode number 4 that is going into detail about all of the things that I have been doing for my gut health and what's been going on. Since I think I started in January, I've been running all the labs. I've been basically being my own client. And much has happened since I put out the last episode. I think it was like 20 episodes ago. So that's a long time. So this has been way overdue. And if you want to catch up and hear all of the things that I've been doing and kind of what my symptoms were and all of these things, I will link the previous 3 episodes that I have done about my healing journey and all of the labs and all of the drama that has ensued because it's been interesting. So those will be in the show notes or below the video, wherever you're watching. But where we left off in my journey was I had done an oat test, which is an organic acids test. And so it's a urine test that just looks at metabolites and organic acids of kind of byproducts and things that go on, cellular processes, microbial byproducts, things like that. And I had found elevated levels of mold in my body, which was not fun, but it made sense because we had noticed like mold on the walls of our bathroom, which I mean, as like a functional practitioner, I feel like I should be embarrassed to say, but honestly, it's just real life. Like we have little kids and we were just like, oh yeah, there's some stuff on the walls in our bathroom. We'll take care of it. But as soon as I saw those oat results, I was like, yeah, we need to get rid of that. So we found that. I also found some candida that showed up on the oat test, and I had H. pylori show up on my GI map test. So, a lot going on in my little body. I was also really focusing on some nervous system support. I had started using the vagus stem, and I was just trying to add in some calming practices during my crazy, busy, like mom business, juggling all of the things days. So, since that last update episode, I have finished my mold, candida, and H. pylori protocols, and I have retested my oat to see what the mold situation was looking like after my treatment protocol. Right, so we definitely removed all of the visible mold off of the walls in the bathroom, but removing the mold exposure and ridding your body of mold can be 2 very different things, and it can take a little bit more effort and time to get the mold out of your body. So I was not sure what was going on, but I redid my oat results and my oat was so much better, which I was really thankful for. You know, that just told me that we had remediated the mold properly. We installed that giant vent fan. You'll have to go back and listen to the episode. It's a whole, it's a whole thing. And I did do that pretty extensive fungal supplement protocol. So I hoped that things were better, but you never really know, how long it's going to take to get rid of stuff like that. So I can show you my before and my after so you can see the improvement. So let me pull up my screen and we will look at that because that will be fun. Okay, so if you're watching on YouTube, you can see my December 2025 oat results on the left and then my June 2026 oat results on the right. And so, like I said, I had noticed both some fungal overgrowth and some candida overgrowth on the oat I did back in December. And so you can see marker 2 and marker 4 were the ones that cued me off to that mold growth. So 2 is an aspergillus metabolite, and so is number 4. I'm not even going to try to say those names, but you can see them there. 4 was elevated, and then 2 was at the very high end of the normal range. And so those were just big clues that there was some mold colonization in my body and probably some mold exposure in the environment, which we visualized. So that was thankfully not too hard to figure out. And then number 7, the arabinose, is a candida metabolite. And so that one was elevated at a 34 with that reference range, the high end of the reference range being a 29. And so pretty much everything else on this microbial section of my oat was normal from December. And I also did the rest of the oat test as well, and that was honestly pretty unremarkable. So it was really just this microbial section that showed the mold and the candida. And then if we look at my results from June, so much better. So the marker 2 and marker 4, which were elevated, were way back down to almost nothing, which I was really thankful about. And none of the other mold markers had moved, nothing else going on. And then marker number 7, the arabinose, was now within the reference range at 25, still kind of on the high end, and so probably some more work to do there, but I'm not really someone to just hammer away with an antimicrobial or an antifungal treatment just in the name of getting a normal or a better test result. So there are likely other more effective things that I could be doing right now to improve my gut terrain and my gut environment and make it just a not so great place for candida to live. And so I will potentially, circle back to doing another mini candida treatment in the future, but the levels definitely improved and were no longer elevated. So I was pretty happy with the results there. So those were my oat results. Again, really positive, promising things happening. We got rid of the mold. I finished that candida and the H. pylori treatment protocol. And so great first step, right? We addressed those labs. And at this point, looking back all the way to like May, June, it's hard to remember exactly what my symptoms were like, but I have definitely been having less bloating and less gas, and bowel movements have been much less of like the typical constipated type that I was having before, although they are still not perfect. We still have some room for improvement. They're kind of now more on the mushy side, which is a complete 180 from where I was before when I was having the more typical presentation of constipation. So definitely not perfect, definitely room for improvement again. And I think what I'm experiencing now is more of like a bile gallbladder problem than it is a traditional gut infection problem, which we will talk about in a little bit. But first, during all of this, addressing the mold and the candida and the H. pylori, I had also gotten some thyroid blood labs done, and I did an HTMA, and I never showed you those results. So we can do that now because these 2 labs were really helpful in just getting some data on the foundational pieces that my body was needing. And I was able to address those findings, and that has really improved how I've felt throughout the day. And I can probably imagine that since I feel better, I have more energy, I'm not super tired, that my body is just functioning better at a foundational level. And that's going to improve my chances of improving all of my symptoms and just rebalancing my gut and things. So let's look at some thyroid labs. All right, so let me explain a little bit about how I look at blood labs as a functional practitioner versus how conventional doctors look at blood labs. So when you get your lab results back from your doctor, you will see your result, and then you will also see a high end and a low end of the normal reference range. And these normal ranges are created by looking at every single lab result that comes through that lab. And then they use statistics to determine what is a quote unquote normal result, and then what is outside of that normal range. And if you've done blood work a lot, you may have noticed that those reference ranges are different depending on the different labs that you get your blood drawn and processed through. And so, really, those ranges are just an average and some standard deviations of the people getting their blood drawn. So, is that the best way to determine what is in and out of range? Maybe not. I will argue likely not, because healthy people usually aren't going to the doctor to get their blood tested, right? And so you are comparing yourself to a bunch of sick people, really, which, when we're looking at things from a functional perspective, trying to make you feel optimal, not just not ill, that's not the greatest way to look at things. And these conventional lab ranges are also meant to make sure that you're not in the range where a disease state is taking place, which is very important, right? We don't want that, and that's your doctor's job, is to make sure you are staying out of a disease state. But my job as a functional practitioner is to help you feel optimally, not just without disease. And so in order to do that, my lab ranges are much tighter than these conventional lab ranges that you normally see. And this enables me to catch markers that are moving outside of optimal before things get too out of control, and when those kind of drifting markers might make you feel not so great. So that's how I look at things, just so you understand why what I'm going to talk about looks like it should be normal. Like, there's nothing out of range on my lab right here. But when I'm looking at things from a functional lens, I have different, tighter reference intervals that I'm looking at. And that's why I'm going to say, like, oh, yeah, things were high or low, because they were not quote unquote optimal. I just don't have, right, like thyroid disease or anything like that. Okay, so we are going to start looking at thyroid markers. So my TSH is in a great range. Really, anything between 1 and 2 is optimal. If you can't see the screen, my TSH is a 1.42, so that's perfect. We love that. And then my T4, so the thyroxine, is an 8.3, which is in range both conventionally and functionally. But where things start to go south is the conversion from T4 to T3. So my T3 is low functionally. It's a 113. And then my reverse T3, which I may not have grabbed the report that had the reverse T3 on it, but that was also elevated. So with a low T3 and a high reverse T3, again, functionally, that means my body is essentially taking that T4 and converting it to more of a reverse T3 than a T3. And so T3 is the active form of thyroid hormone. That's what's needed to run your metabolism, your gut motility, your hormone production, and essentially every metabolic process in your body. And so when we see that reverse T3 being elevated and T3 being low, that just means we have too much of that T4, again, being converted into reverse T3, which is the inactive, kind of putting the brakes on form of T3, and not enough being converted into active T3, which can be used by my body. So essentially, my body is in a stress state, slowing everything down, which is how I felt. I would get tired in the afternoon and just feel like no matter how much I slept, I was just low in energy. This can also happen when you do have gut infections, when you are exposed to mold. So, not surprising. So basically what I did here was just add in a few essential nutrients that are needed for this conversion from T4 to T3. And that helped so much. I stopped having that energy crash in the afternoon. My nails stopped breaking and being really brittle and peeling. And I just felt so much better at a baseline. And this is exactly why I do thyroid labs on every single one of my clients, because it's such an important piece of feeling well and having proper gut motility and function. And doctors aren't looking at all of this. Doctors will check a TSH and a T4. And if you look at my numbers, my TSH and T4 were perfect, But that's just where things start to fall apart, is right below that level. And it's mind-boggling to me why doctors refuse to order anything else when that's really the most important, and that's what tends to break down in a lot of people. So I could probably go on a whole soapbox about that, but all of my clients get thyroid labs done, and a majority of them look like this. So that was my thyroid. We addressed that, and I feel so much better and have continued to feel better for months now. So let's find my HTMA. All right. And so the story here is that everything is low, which is not a shocker to me. This is pretty much how my results have looked ever since I had my second child, for whatever reason. And maybe it's a gallbladder, bile, digestive capacity reason. I have not been able to bring my mineral levels up, which we're working on it. So let me go over real quick how to read this report so you get a little oriented. So these are all of your mineral levels down here on the bottom. We have our primary minerals, which is calcium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium. And then we've got our secondary and tertiary minerals. We've got toxic elements, which we want to be as low as possible. And then we just got some additional elements down here and some mineral ratios there. So primarily, I'm just going to be focusing on my first four minerals, the primary minerals, and my metabolic type for this kind of first pass, because really you can't do much else with all of the other minerals until you move the needle on your first four minerals. So we see this reference range here, this kind of blue faded bar here is like optimal. And then you've got the white, which is that first standard deviation. And then you've got the kind of light purple, which is the second standard deviation. And then everything else is outside of the reference range. And so you can see calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium all low, well below that optimal range there. And so again, this is how my results have looked since probably 2021. And I've tried all of the things, I've done all the minerals, and so it's made me think, right, there must be more. There must be another reason beyond just pumping myself with more and more minerals as to why my body can't hold on to or absorb these minerals properly, which again kind of led me down the rabbit trail of like, hey, maybe my digestive capacity is not great, maybe my bile flow is not great, I'm just not absorbing things. We'll talk about that in a second. But with these results, I got myself a custom mineral blend that addressed all of my deficiencies. And then, more importantly, which was really, really interesting, I paid attention to my metabolic type, which was a fast 4. This metabolic type, the lab takes some information about your specific mineral pattern and categorizes you into either fast or slow, and then 1 through 4. So I was the fastest of fast, which again, not surprised. And so really what that means is that my body is in a revved up, kind of tending towards a sympathetic fight or flight nervous system state, and my adrenals and thyroid are on the struggle bus, pretty depleted, which again, makes sense. I've been pregnant twice, have little kids, always on the go, feeling exhausted, that type of stuff. And one of the really helpful and really cool things about understanding this metabolic type is that it can help you guide diet recommendations to support your body in dealing with the specific stressors that your body is under. And so for me, since my body is in a fast, revved up state, I really needed to shift to a more protein and fat heavy way of eating and less carbs. Carbs are quickly metabolized, and so one way to counteract this fast metabolic state is to consume more slowly digested foods like protein and fats. And I can take that down because I think that's all I wanted to share there. But if you know me, you know that I've been eating the exact same buckwheat kind of porridge sort of breakfast thing for the last like 5+ years. And as a result of my HTMA, I decided to sadly pull the plug on that breakfast and finally make a change on that more carb heavy breakfast. And that change has made me feel so good. I switched to doing a yogurt with a like homemade granola recipe and some other toppings. And so that's been really good. I feel like I have more energy during the morning, and that animal protein from the yogurt has been really helpful in just keeping me full and less hungry before lunch. I've also been eating more liverwurst and more red meat, so that's been fun. And so that's really what I got from my HTMA results. My first four minerals were all low, which is a pattern that you call four lows. So I added in a bunch of minerals, a bunch of like liver support and other nutrient support, digestive support, changed my diet, all of those things. So those are all of the big findings in the labs that I've been working on for the last few months. And really, the thyroid stuff was the biggest needle mover as far as my energy and just how I was able to show up during the day. So if you're feeling stuck, find someone to run you a full thyroid panel, and honestly, that will probably make such a huge difference. Because if you're not feeling well, your internal self is not feeling well too, and there's no way that your body can overcome gut infections, produce enough stomach acid and pancreatic enzymes when your thyroid is on the fritz and running really slow. So it's a big game changer for me and for a lot of my clients. All right. So those are my labs. Let me just touch on some of the practical updates that I have been doing lately because drama. Why always so much drama? So I think back in June, I reached out to my old practitioner who I had worked with long before I was a practitioner, probably, oh man, the last time we worked together was probably like 2018, 2019. And so she was the FDN that helped me figure out everything and finally be able to feel better again from, the big collapse, my big years-long digestive hot mess, H. pylori, SIBO, all of those things. And so she is also the reason why I became an FDN, and we've kept in touch over the years. But it was really nice to just talk to her again. And I was like, hey, can I work with you? And she was like, of course. Because after my last attempt of working with someone, which was a crash and burn, I just felt like I needed a person and a methodology that I trusted. And I knew her and I knew how she was going to keep digging. I knew how FDNs worked because I'm an FDN and we are very evidence-based. We keep going until we figure things out. And I don't know why it took me so long to think to work with her again. I don't know, but it's been the best decision just to have someone who's like understands everything that I understand and who's on kind of like an equal thought pattern about your body and about how to use detective work and root cause analysis to figure things out, just to like bounce ideas off of. And so that's been so good. And I'm sure you feel this too, right? When you find someone to work with, it just feels nice to not be the only one trying to figure out what's going on with your health. You can have someone in your corner who's taking that responsibility. And so that's been really nice, a big weight off my shoulders. And she's had some amazing ideas and suggestions and lots of things. We actually ran a different kind of stool test together. It was the Microbiome Labs Biome FX. So like the whole microbiome genome test. And I can probably share that next time. It was really interesting. And then she recommended that I try some castor oil packs and this like liver support supplement to help with bile flow and all of those gallbladder related things. And so I did that. And this is where the drama ensued, of course. So I started the castor oil packs on my liver at night. I started the liver support supplement. It was a little like drink. And I started getting that pain under my right rib cage again, exactly like I had before I passed that gallstone back in January. So I was like, what is going on? This is so weird because my gallbladder had been completely fine, no pain, no issues for months until I started stimulating bile flow with the castor oil packs and that little supplement. And the pain would get pretty bad, worse after eating. And so I was like, okay, this is not good. I was, concerned that I had gallstones, that they were going to get stuck. I was going to have emergency gallbladder surgery. And I was like, we need to revert back to Operation Save the Gallbladder. Right? Because when you have one gallstone, usually there are more. And I know that I passed that one in January. So I was like, all right, maybe there's more. Don't know what's going on. I just didn't want to get anything stuck, have an emergency situation. So I stopped doing all the things and it really did take like a few weeks for that pain to calm down. But during that time, I went to the doctor, yes, a real doctor, and I got an order for a gallbladder ultrasound. And that way I could understand why I was having that pain. I could visualize what was going on. I could know better what my next steps would be because at that point, I felt kind of stuck. I didn't know why I was having that pain, and so I couldn't really move forward either way. And so really my kind of two pathways that I didn't know which one I was going to go down was if there were stones or bile sludge in there, I would know that I needed to stop stimulating bile flow. We needed to calm everything down, and I needed to work on improving bile quality and dissolving those stones. But on the other side, if there were no stones or sludge, I knew that the pain was from something else. It was very strange if there were no stones or sludge. But I could try pushing through and continue with the castor oil packs and things. So, got my ultrasound done, and everything was completely normal. No stones, no sludge. My gallbladder was perfect, which was great, right? That was the optimal, ideal result. I did not want to have anything going on. And that also meant that what I have been doing as far as gallbladder bile support has likely dissolved any other stones, has resolved any structural gallbladder issues. And so my gallbladder, at least from that perspective, looked amazing. And we know that from a functional standpoint, it was not working amazing. I was having lots of symptoms related to poor bile flow and poor liver and gallbladder function. So again, this is why we look at things from a functional lens, not just a conventional standpoint. But that clear gallbladder scan really helped me feel confident continuing with the castor oil packs and the liver support, knowing that I wasn't going to cause some huge emergency. So we're doing that currently. And so funny enough, when I restarted the castor oil packs and that liver support supplement after my ultrasound, I didn't have the pain. I mean, I felt like I could feel that gallbladder area, but it was not the severe pain that I was having before. So who knows what was going on? My hands are in the air. I have no idea. But I'm glad it caused me to do that ultrasound and get just confirmation that things are fine in gallbladder land, at least structurally and visually. So we're still trying to figure out what could possibly be going on to cause that like less than optimal bile flow, the kind of like mushy, weird bowel movements. We're still working on it. But beyond that, my FDN practitioner also recommended that I try acupuncture to help support liver and gallbladder function. So I actually have that appointment this week, and I will let you know how that goes. I'm hopeful because not much else has been working. So we're open to it. And more things. We're almost done, I promise. While my gallbladder was on the struggle bus those few weeks ago, I kind of panic enrolled in a gallbladder genomics course from another FDN to get a better understanding about how my genetics were playing a role in bile production and things like that. And so, along with that course and all of that information in there, I did do genetics testing on myself, and I found out all of like my sluggish genes and my SNPs and all of those things. And so that was really interesting, and that actually explained a lot. So I will definitely go into that and share all of that next time because that's really interesting, something that I've never looked into before, but that makes a lot of sense based on the symptoms I'm experiencing and explains so much of what's going on. So we'll look at that next time I do an update episode. But that's pretty much the update. I very much promise to do another one of these in the next few weeks because I'm hopeful the acupuncture will bring some improvements, and I will make sure to share all of that. Well, that's fresh in my mind, and we'll look at that genetic stuff because that's really cool. So I know it was like a little lab nerdy, so I hope that was helpful and just a good peek into, both someone else's healing journey and how you can kind of run into a lot of dead ends before you really find the best way forward. It's kind of like a little zigzag. There's lots of ups and downs, but all of the downs and all of the dead ends are answers as well. They're just not like answers forward, but it helps you figure things out. And I hope that this kind of shows you how my brain works as an FDN and how I use both the functional labs, right? The HTMA, the GMF, all the things, and the conventional testing. We did an ultrasound, and that was insanely helpful and very important in moving me forward. And that way I can make the most educated decisions to keep moving on. So that was it. I hope you enjoyed it and stay tuned for more, hopefully less drama, but more health updates in the future. But I hope you have a great week, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much for tuning into the Stomach Solution. If you got something valuable out of today's episode, please subscribe to the show and leave a rating and review wherever you're listening. It takes about 30 seconds and makes a huge difference in helping this show reach the people who need it the most. And if you're ready to dig even deeper into what's going on with your gut, come find me on Instagram at the Gut Healing Ninja, or head to thegуthealingninja.com to get more resources and strategies to help you heal. And remember, there is a solution to your stomach issues, and we will find it together.